So we'll watch this little interaction between Piers Morgan and Patrick Kielty. And why this is interesting is not so much because of the people themselves, but just the thought patterns, right? And also the faux reactions from the crowd, or even if they're genuine reactions from the crowd. It speaks to a current mentally deficient, cognitively deficient virus, I would say, or pattern of thinking that a lot of people in the West are currently subservient to, I would suggest, right? I don't think they've grappled with it in any real way. I think it's people are just based on knee-jerk reactions and conditioning now at the moment, right? We're all Pavlovian dogs that salivate and cheer when we hear the socially approved response, right? So we'll have a little listen to this. And what's interesting about this to me as well is that this is on national television, right? So there's a lot of people that are going to be after seeing this in Ireland. And I would suggest that it's not so much trying to convince people that the views that they hold are wrong or how they're thinking about a thing is wrong. It's just about trying to get people to even hypothetically ask the question of, could I be wrong? Did I make mistakes in my thinking along the way that got me here? And is my current state of mind and my current cognitive abilities dependent on some mistakes I made in thinking along the way, right? And these few seconds are a good embodiment of that kind of struggle, right?
You might categorize my views as controversial. I don't. I genuinely.
No, I just categorize some of your views as wrong. I don't think they're controversial.
In the same way that you said that I'm wrong. Okay. Let's test that theory. Which of my views do you think are so wrong?
I would say.
How long have we got?
How long? Literally, how
He's
long?
running down the clock. You see my point?
I'm not running down.
Now you're struggling, right?
No.
You know I'm controversial, but you can't remember why.
Piers, I mean, we literally could be here until 12.
Give me one.
Until 12 o'clock.
Give me one.
Well, I think the idea of supporting Trump, for a start.
I didn't support Trump. I said he'd win.
If he called you in the morning, would you take a job?
Right, so you can see this, and you can see the performance in these people, right? They're actors, okay? So
Categorize my views as controversial. I don't. I genuinely.
No, I just categorize some of your views as wrong. I don't think they're controversial.
look, I did the right thing. See? And like, you can see what these people are aimed at, right? So they're aimed at demonizing a person, establishing the status quo or reinforcing the status quo that Piers Morgan in and of himself is wrong, right? Regardless of what your views are on Piers Morgan, and he's been blatantly incorrect about some serious topics, right? But at least be able to engage in an honest conversation, right? If you're going to try and tag somebody as innately morally reprehensible, then at least have a couple of examples, right?
In the same way that you said that I'm wrong. Okay. Let's test that theory. Which of my views do you think are so wrong?
I would say.
He would say nothing because he hasn't a clue, right? How surface level he is shows in when he makes a suggestion, he looks at the camera. That's his whole world. His whole world is the response of the camera and him feeding and trying to cultivate a response from those on the other side of the camera that are watching it, right? And when he's asked for an example, he hasn't a clue. And Piers Morgan does a great job of calling that out for exactly what it is. You're struggling. You're trying to wind down the clock here, right? And then he just says, oh, well, you supporting Trump for a start. Yet you're begging the question there, Patrick Kielty. What about supporting Trump makes someone A, controversial, or B, wrong? Because you said he was wrong, right? So what is it about having a different support, even if Piers did support Trump, right? We can pull this back and expand it further than Patrick Kielty and Piers Morgan, right? Because it's par for the course when talking about these topics in society at the moment, right? That you get these sort of Agent Smith moments, right? Where you're speaking to a clear defender of the status quo who doesn't have the ability to even defend the status quo beyond crowd manipulation, which is what these TV presenters are, right? So when asked, look at the face on him there, like, hasn't a clue. Hasn't a clue. He was given his prompts and nobody thought to give him a follow-up question or to give him an example of something where he could bore into Piers Morgan, right? Because I could give a couple offhand, right, where you could demonstrably prove that what Piers was saying was totally incorrect and dangerous to people in terms of sharing that view and doubling down on it in subsequent months and years, right? But Patrick Kielty won't go there. Number one, he wants to be seen as right. He wants to get the crowd on side. But number two, there's certain topics that he won't speak about, even if it gets him a victory, right, on public television, that he won't go near, right? So this is an example of when, if you're dealing with people that have this sort of knee-jerk response going, oh, well, you voted for Trump, or you supported Trump, or whatever the case is, right? So fine, and what's wrong with that? Like, what's wrong with having a different perspective? Unless you go on to show me why my perspective is incorrect following that, then just saying that somebody supported Trump is nonsense. It doesn't mean anything, right? And it's not the win that people think that it is anymore. Maybe 4 years ago or 8 years ago it absolutely was, right? But it's not the win that these people think it is anymore. Because people are after cottoning onto them, right? They're after getting a little bit braver because of conversations like this, right? Where you're not seeing people totally just take the fetal position and acquiesce to these narrative spinners, right? So we can all use this as well. So what perspective? So I had a conversation with someone recently, and it was about the election. It was before the election, a couple of days before. And they were saying Kamala Harris is definitely going to win. And she's like, it's looking 50-50, but it's kind of leaning towards her. And I was suggesting that they said the same thing about Hillary Clinton, that she had a 96% chance of winning in the days leading up to the election. Did they? Yeah. Yeah, they did, yeah. Right, all right. Yeah, but Kamala is different. Why? Why is Kamala different? Well, look, the polls and that are saying. I said, which polls? Like, where are you getting your information? TikTok. All right, and what country is TikTok from, or what country is the company that runs TikTok subservient to, whether they state it or not? I don't know. China. Who's China's main competitor? Is it Kamala Harris? Don't think so. Is it Trump, who has shown that he's a history of levying tariffs and stuff and taxes onto China, right? So would they be interested in working with him again? Probably not, right? And on and on and on this thing goes, right? And you get the same thing, right? Trump is a nutcase. He's going to start a war. I'm like, grand, yeah, but did he start one in the 4 years he was in office? Well, no, but like this time. Okay, well, you're basing that on nothing, really. Instead of basing it on the 4 years that we all know we can take from. We can pull his experience in the role as the president of America and go, right, did he do that? No. Did he do any of the things that he was declared that he was going to do instantly in 2016? No, not many, like, right? And then people so this person just turned around at the end of it and said, well, I don't really know much about it anyway, right? And this is where, and then went kind of backhandedly going, you're just a racist. You know, this kind of nonsense. Like, this is when people have got nothing left, they resort to name calling. So anyone that starts out by name calling, they're already telling you that they actually don't have anything to add to the conversation. They're just repeating what they believe is the right thing to repeat, right? And this is what you're dealing with here in Patrick Kielty as well. Ask the basic question. You said I'm wrong. Give me an example of something that was wrong. Having a clue. You know? And this is great that it's on Irish national television, because hopefully it'll make a few people go, Patrick Kielty looked a bit stupid there, didn't he? He didn't actually have anything to say to Piers. I thought he would now. Is it not so obvious that Piers says all these things that are wrong and incorrect and controversial, whatever that means, right? So what would I have said to Piers in that situation? Because I know that he's wrong and controversial. And then people will scramble a little bit. Or they'll just go, well, look, Piers is just being the usual Piers and being a fool, right? But again, we're back to the name calling thing. So as soon as someone starts calling other people names, right? ad hominem attacks, right? Piers is a big fool, therefore he's wrong, and he's wrong because he's a big fool. Fair enough, but what's he wrong on? What am I wrong on? Trump. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the level of cognitive deficiency you're dealing with people. They have no idea where their ideas came from. They've no idea that their ideas are not their own, right? But their unconscious betrays them a little bit, right? There's a part in all of us that knows fundamentally what we're about and when we're being self-deceptive and deceptive towards other people, right? There's a part in us that remains aware. Hypnotists are aware of this, right? That there is a part in each person that it refuses to be hypnotized. They can only get so deep in the level of influence they can have over a person's mind, but they cannot control a person totally. And what that says is that there's something in all of us that does not betray our honesty and our integrity and our truth, right? It remains sacrosanct in all of us. It is indivisible. It cannot be split off and forced to attack itself, right? There's a beautiful thing in that. You can call out whatever you want. The self, your conscience, your holy guardian angel, God, whatever you want, right? But that thing has been shown to be there, right? That thing has been shown to be there. So what happens then is we're aware on a subtle level that we don't have the correct ability or the correct information or the correct standing to be able to defend the position that we consciously espouse, i.e. Piers Morgan is wrong. Trump is wrong, right? Whatever the case is, it can be any case. Trump and Piers Morgan are irrelevant here. It's the thinking I'm talking about, right? So in order to then defend ourselves and to avoid having the honest conversation of putting your hand up and saying, you know what, actually, maybe I bought into something there and I haven't really thought it through fully, which is fine, which is great. That's an area of learning for people. It's just a lot of people don't get to that position because they don't want to look silly in public, right? Or they don't want to look less than or look like they don't know as much as they would like to be seen to know, right? So what happens then is, because we have an unconscious awareness of our own integrity and what we understand and what we don't, when someone gets close to uncovering that, as Piers did here with Patrick Kielty, saying, look, you're struggling here, you're trying to wind down the clock now, I know how the game is played, I do the same job myself, right? What tends to happen is people just go into flinging mud or throwing any sort of topic at someone, hoping something sticks, right? And hoping the crowd gets behind them, right? And then when that fails, you go to name calling, which is a sorry state. Like, it's beneath even children to be at that level, right? It is an unformed mind, an undeveloped mind, and it speaks or reeks of a person's detachment from cultivating a relationship with that inner core that I spoke about that refuses to be hypnotized, right? How prevalent that is in everybody. Is it there in everybody? Is it lost? Can it be killed? The suggestion is that it can't, okay? So everyone is going around with a sense of how self-deceiving they are in terms of that core, right? And that's where you see anxieties and stuff, where you're living a double life. You're refusing to line up the core you, right? The very essence of yourself that refuses the lie, right? With your conscious or social ego. How you want to be seen by others, right? There's a split there. You want to be socially approved of, but you also are aware that you harbour such feelings or sentiments about topics and ideas that aren't socially approved of. Therefore, what do you do with that? Do you bury and deny them and you trade in honesty and integrity for social approval? Or do you devote yourself to integrity and self-honesty and try and lessen as much self-deception as possible, bearing in mind that you will not get the social approval that we all want to a degree, right? We all want to a degree. So the battle is then, are you willing to be as honest as you can with yourself and with the world as a result of that, for the sake of knowing that you're an honest human being, you're honest with yourself, the relationship you have with yourself is genuine and authentic and it has integrity to it, right? But there's a social price to pay for that. And we're in that time now where the cultivation of selfhood, right? Of lining up all aspects of yourself. Who you are when you're on your own, who you are when you're in public, and who you are when you're in a group. And how do you stand up to adversity when you're in disagreement with a group, right? Where all those things are lined up, where you're the same person when you close the door at night, and that's very, very close to who you are in public as well, right? The divergence is not so extreme. That's what we're dealing with here. Freud called it there's a documentary on Freud called The Century of the Self, right? And it's about that, cultivating a relationship with yourself, right? Putting yourself center stage as you are, like you're the center of your own universe in this life, right? And so is everyone else, right? So this is an interesting one, and again, like it's not so much the personalities, it's the principles that you're seeing being duelled with or being duelled over, rather than the faces that are actually doing the dueling that is the most important thing.